You didn't see me there. I just realized I wasn't on the stage, but it's fine. I don't really like people seeing me too much. But yeah, so if this does turn out to be true, that is Thomas, go to Guilty of Crimes page on YouTube, Jay Scott, and give her a big shout out because she's called this right from the beginning 4 weeks ago when it all started. And so, this is sort of like, hopefully, good news and not fake news. I really will kick myself if it turns out to be bloody fake. So I'll get in and play it for you. Just got to see which one I'm on.
Breaking news. A new massive breakthrough in the Nancy Guthrie case has just surfaced. We have obtained 2 brand new high-definition forensic clips.
This is the leaked FBI interrogation of Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law, and you're about to watch a man destroy himself in real time. The footage was sealed inside a federal case file, never supposed to reach the public, but it did. And what it captured over 6 hours inside a windowless room changes everything about this case. It starts with a son-in-law in pajamas at 5:30 a.m., still believing he can outsmart 2 FBI agents, performing shock, performing grief, performing the worried family member.
Now, this guy here, I don't know if he has anything to do with it because I can't see if that backpack is anything like the one that the other one was wearing. But there was a bit of a story on this that it was at the right sort of time, not too far away from Nancy's house. For some strange reason, he put that backpack over the wall and then left again. So that don't make sense to me unless it's a drugs drop-off or something. But I thought I heard the police cleared him, but just because you're cleared, it doesn't mean to say that you can not come back and be re-questioned. So hopefully in the next week or so, I would like to know definitely who has taken Nancy, because we need to get Nancy back one way or another, alive or unalive, and that for the sake of all their family. But I'll play it because I'm intrigued to listen.
So convincingly that for the first 90 minutes, you'd almost believe him. Almost. Then the lead agent reaches for a laptop, presses play on a traced phone call from 2:47 a.m., and the performance dies in 4 seconds flat. What comes out of that speaker is the son-in-law's own voice, discussing things about Nancy's kidnapping that only the person who planned it would ever know.
Really?
And that recording isn't even the most damaging thing in the room. The room. The footage opens cold. Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law is being walked into a stark, windowless FBI interview room at 5:30 a.m., still in the pajamas he was wearing, when a SWAT team put a battering ram through his front door.
Why don't you just say SWAT team rather than spelling it out?
An hour earlier. Hair uncombed, eyes swollen, but already performing, already projecting this theatrical confusion, blinking under the fluorescent lights like a man who couldn't possibly fathom why federal agents just dragged him out of bed. 2 agents sit down across from him. Lead interrogator, Special Agent Russell Dante. Music. A 23-year veteran out of the FBI's Violent Crimes Division, known internally for his ability to break music suspects who believe they're smarter than everyone in the room. His partner, a younger agent who barely speaks for the entire next 6 hours, but whose pen never stops moving, documenting every word, every flinch, every micro expression that crosses the son-in-law's face. Agent Dante reads the Miranda warnings. The son-in-law waves it off and declines an attorney without hesitation. Then he leans forward, hands flat on the table, steady eye contact. I have absolutely no idea why I'm here. This is insane. I would never hurt Nancy. She's my mother-in-law. I love her like my own mother. Leaning forward, hands flat on the table, steady eye contact. Every word rehearsed, every gesture calculated. He'd clearly spent time preparing for the possibility that this moment might come. What he didn't prepare for was Russell Dante. The rehearsed timeline. Dante asks him to walk through the night Nancy disappeared. The son-in-law delivers the story with the consistency of repetition. Nancy came for dinner at his and Annie's home. They played card games, Nancy's favorite, the one she'd played since her daughters were kids. She was in great spirits. Around 9:45 p.m., he volunteered to drive her home because it was dark. He says he walked Nancy to her front door, waited until he heard the lock click, then drove away, satisfied she was safe.
Now, What's also making me think this could be fake or not true news is I was heard on the news and things that Nancy entered her home via the garage, not through the front door. So, that's which story is right. We just don't know. I know the police and FBI hold a lot of information that they know is 100% true, and they're not telling the public what's the truth and all of the information. But I'm having my doubts now. But hey ho, let's jump into the chaos.
He adds details to sound credible. What she wore, what she ate, how she laughed during dessert, telling a story about her late husband. Remember that, because it means the last hours Nancy spent as a free woman ended with her laughing at a family dinner, surrounded by people she trusted, including the man now insisting he has no idea why he's here. For 90 minutes, he holds composure. He answers quickly. He asks how the search is going, playing the helpful relative. Dante lets him talk, repeat, and commit, because Dante isn't collecting facts anymore. He's letting the suspect lock himself into a story. Then Dante changes the air in the room. The phone call. 90 minutes in, his son-in-law is leaning back now, almost relaxed, delivering his third retelling of that evening with growing confidence. Dante's entire demeanor shifts. The conversational warmth drains out of his voice like water through a cracked glass. He leans forward and says 7 words. I want you to listen very carefully. The son-in-law's face shows mild curiosity, as if he's genuinely interested in whatever the FBI thinks they have. That curiosity lasted exactly as long as it took for the speakers to fill that room with his own voice. It's a traced call from a burner phone to his personal cell at 2:47 a.m. The kidnapper is discussing Nancy's deteriorating condition, a ransom plan that failed, and what to do with her now that it has spiraled. And the son-in-law responds like a man who already knows the plan. He discusses logistics. He references details about Nancy's captivity that only someone directing the operation would know. On camera, his body betrays him. The color drains from his face. His hands start trembling so hard, the camera catches it from across the room. He recoils into the chair like he wants to vanish. The call ends. Silence hangs. Dante asks one question. That's your voice, isn't it? The son-in-law tries denial. That doesn't sound like me. His voice cracks.
Now, I know these images, like of shaking hands and the phone's not true footage that FBI's got. But I still think this might be fake. I don't know. I'm 50-50. I'm new to doing YouTube crime channel. And I've got so much to learn, of what's fake and what's true. I know before I've sent new articles over to Jay by email, and she goes, bin that, it's fake. So, I've got a lot of learning to do. And hopefully, if I get enough subscribers, I can stay here long enough to do this. But I'm putting everything I got into this. I'm trying to at least put 1 video out a day. Sometimes there might be 2 or 3, just depending what I've got, but there might be short ones. But look, this video is long enough as it is without my chit chat. I'll only stop it if I don't know what I'll do. Let's play it.
I don't know what that is. Dante plays it again, pausing at key lines, rewinding, isolating the phrases that tie him to the kidnapper's decisions. The son-in-law's breathing turns shallow and fast. He pivots. It was business, a personal situation. Something investigators are misreading. Anything but what it plainly sounds like. Dante doesn't argue. He reaches for paper. The text messages. A thick folder hits the table. Inside are printed copies of texts between the son-in-law and his cousin Marcus, spanning 3 weeks before Nancy vanished through the night she was taken. Dante reads them aloud, slow and deliberate, sliding each page across the table. Thursday night works best. Her routine is predictable. You'll need to disable the doorbell camera first thing. I'll tell you exactly where it is. The back door is the weak point. Front door has too much security. She takes sleeping pills around 10 o'clock p.m. Give it an hour after that. They're not vague. They're instructions. Nancy's routine, her house, the window when she's vulnerable. The son-in-law claims his phone was hacked. Someone framed him. Dante counters with cell tower records, placing the phone where the son-in-law was when the messages were sent, plus matching copies on Marcus's phone, carrier logs, the device itself, and cloud backups. The hacked story collapses. And Dante isn't done. For Nancy's specific medication schedule and her home security system, the son-in-law's defense, he was researching a crime novel. Agent Dante shut that down with 3 sentences. No manuscript files on the laptop, no notes, no outlines. Not a single document suggesting any creative writing project had ever existed on that machine. At this point, the son-in-law finally tried invoking his Fifth Amendment right to silence. Too late. 3 hours of recorded lies, contradictions, and failed explanations were already preserved on that camera. The damage was catastrophic and irreversible, but the evidence wasn't finished with him yet. What agents revealed about his finances explained not just how he planned the kidnapping, but why he was desperate enough to orchestrate it in the first place. Following the money, Dante shifts to finances. First, total financial collapse. Checking account overdrawn by thousands. Credit cards maxed with payments months behind. Mortgage in default. Foreclosure threatened within 60 days. Combined debts exceeding $250,000 against income that barely covered monthly expenses. Second, cash withdrawals totaling $30,000 in the 3 weeks before Nancy vanished.
Why?
When asked where it went, his explanations shift, then stall. I can't remember. Third, the inheritance clock. Nancy's will splits her multi-million-dollar estate between her 2 daughters. If Nancy dies before changing it, Annie inherits about $2 million, enough to erase their debts overnight. But Nancy had scheduled an appointment to revise the will and dramatically reduce Annie's share. That appointment was days away.
Wow.
Agents say the son-in-law knew. He overheard it at a family dinner. He wasn't just broke. He was watching a lifeline disappear, and the clock was running out. But the financial trail only explained the why. What happened next in that interrogation room revealed the how. And it started with the son-in-law's psychological defenses finally completely shattering the breaking point.
They should do extreme torture to get the truth out of them. I'm still don't know if this is true or not. It's really dumbfounded me, this has. I know I didn't get hardly any sleep last night. I had 2.5 hours and then I was back up in pain. But it could be just my tiredness that's just making me believe this is true. But then some things I don't think is true. So I'm 50-50, but I don't want to say it's true and then false lead everyone else that's watching this video on my channel to believe it's true. Because at the moment, I'm saying take it at your own will, make of it what you want to make of it. I'm 50-50 and I don't know if it's true or not true. But we'll carry on playing anyway.
4.5 hours in, the footage shows him unraveling. Slumped posture, shaking hands, drained face. Dante softens his tone and offers a story that sounds like mercy. Maybe you meant to scare her. Maybe you thought Marcus would hold her for a day or two. Things got out of hand. Then Dante makes it about Nancy. She's 84. She doesn't have her heart medication. She doesn't have her blood pressure pills. She carries photos of her grandkids in her purse. You can stop that suffering right now. The son-in-law's eyes fill with tears for the first time. And then comes the first real admission. I knew Marcus was having financial problems. I gave him some money. How much? Maybe $20,000. That ties the cash withdrawals to the man accused of physically taking Nancy. With denial broken, the son-in-law tries the last defense. Blame Marcus. Marcus acted alone. Marcus spoofed the text. Dante lets him talk. Then Dante drops the sentence that erases the fantasy. We have Marcus.
I think from what I remember of Jay's Guilty of Crime, she had put up like a photo thing with Marcus and Lucas, I think it was. And she was saying that they've both got to be in with it. And I think also Mab Investigates, he also did the same story and picture. So we carry on with this one. And then I got another one I just saw earlier as well that I might as well play while I'm here. And then afterwards I'm coming off for the night because my brain is sizzled.
In the next room, and he's telling us something very different. Marcus says the son-in-law approached him with the plan, timeline, entry point, security details, and offered $50,000 to take Nancy and hold her until she died without medication or until ransom hit.
Crazy.
He's giving us specifics. The restaurant where you met to plan, the parking lot where you handed him cash, instructions about Nancy's home, that music he couldn't possibly know unless you personally told him. And this is where conspiracies die. Federal time changes everything. Marcus is facing decades, so Marcus talks. More evidence stacks, security footage of their meetings, witnesses hearing them discuss a job, and financial records proving promised payments beyond the $30,000 already delivered. Cornered, the son-in-law attempts one final maneuver, a partial confession designed to minimize exposure. The discussions were hypothetical. He mentioned details, but never told Marcus to do anything. Dante points back to the 2:47 a.m. call. A man surprised by a kidnapping doesn't get updates from the kidnapper
I didn't
about
think
the
there
victim's
was a
condition.
247
A man
call.
surprised
I heard
doesn't
that
discuss next
Nancy's
steps. 6
heart
hours.
monitor
That's how long it takes for a
disconnected
man
from
who
her
walked
iPhone
into
at
that room
2:47.
believing he was the smartest person in it to unravel. And the most disturbing part of this entire interrogation, not the evidence, not the searches, not the phone call, the 84-year-old woman who carried photos of her grandchildren in her purse and laughed at her own dinner table the night she was taken, she was never more than a dollar sign to him. What Marcus told agents about those first 48 hours after Nancy was taken left hardened investigators unable to speak. And the question everyone in that building was asking, the only one that matters, is whether Nancy Guthrie was still alive when they finally found her. Thanks for watching. And
right, so I don't know what to make of that. I really, really don't. Let me just stop sharing this so I can line up the other video if I can find it. I need to make this one a bit smaller again. Because, you know, I don't really know. My brain's sizzled. I've had so much information over the last 4 weeks about theories and suspicions and things like that. You just don't know. And if this guy, Eric, isn't telling the truth, he could get into a lot of trouble by portraying it as truth. I'm portraying this as it may be truth, but it might not be truth. So please don't take my words or this video that it is truth till we hear it from the FBI, which may be a while before they release that type of information. But I heard, well, I went on JLR's JLR Investigates live feed today for a few minutes, and I saw that there's only one tent outside Nancy Guthrie's house now. So all that media has disappeared, and I'm glad in one way because they didn't do a great deal. JLR and obviously Brian Entin did the most of the reporting and videoing. So shout out to both of those guys. They're top blokes. But all the others weren't really doing much during the daytime. You know, they weren't making the most of their free time, so to speak. It must have got really boring to just stand out there all day long in that heat and, you know, things. So I'm going to play this next one. Let's stop this a second. Now, Brian Entin, I will believe is true because I know, you know, Brian Entin, he's never said anything that's fake news. So let me just go and share this screen with you. I think it's that one. Yeah. So I'll just get straight into this. And I promise you, because this is going to be like an hour-long video, I won't keep on talking over it unless I absolutely have to. Right.
Talking about recovery, that's different language than the FBI was using about finding the person and the person getting convicted.
When she speaks directly to who she thinks took her mother, she tries to come across as almost like sympathetic to whoever took her mother. And it's really made me wonder if one of the avenues that they're looking at here is if this is like a Savannah Guthrie obsessed stalker type, and that may be why she is trying to come across that way in some of these videos.
How does the FBI go about guaranteeing that people who do reach out, that they actually remain anonymous?
Yeah, so Craig, experts say that let's say you submit a tip, it qualifies for the reward, you want to remain anonymous, you can then pick up that reward at a neutral location that's decided, often a place like a post office. That reward will likely be given to you in cash. And all you have to do is show that unique PIN number that's associated with your tip. You do not need to show your ID. Experts say it is really not traceable and no questions asked.
So that's the deal. You know, look, they're trying to get someone in the inner circle of whoever did this to speak up. Brian Entin is the senior national correspondent for News Nation.
I like Brian.
And the reason that I wanted Brian in particular on the show to talk about this is there are a lot of people who do a lot of pontificating, like myself, from
this will be my
comfy
last
studio,
video, guys, because I've got extreme backache tonight. So I'm like, and you know, got pants on fire, basically. It is really discomfort for me to sit here, but I will do it because, you know, I want viewers and things. So, and I want to find out the truth about Nancy.
And then there are the real reporters, and there are not many of them, who go and they live stories. I used to do this stuff. I used to go live, in particular, these crime stories. I'd sit in a courtroom for months on end. And the people who are there, I'm not saying they fly in for a day. I mean, the people who are there day after day are the ones who really get to know these stories. They really are.
Like I was saying just now about Brian Entin, JLR, and I believe Dolly Vision was out there as well, but I don't know how long he was out there.
Are the experts. And Brian Entin is one of the very best in the country at this now. He has established himself as a go-to guy who goes to the scenes, who investigates, he breaks stories, he doesn't go over the top, he tries to stick to the facts, and he joins us now. Brian, thanks a lot for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Dan.
All right, so Brian, right now? Are you back or are you still there?
He's still there?
No, I'm here. I'm outside Nancy Guthrie's house right now. That's Nancy's house behind me. They're actually in the process now of turning it back over to the Guthrie family. So there's a lot of work being done. There was just someone putting in a burglar alarm. We saw them installing security cameras yesterday. So there's like contractors working on the house right now.
So does that mean, Brian, that they're throwing in the towel?
I hope not. I mean, I don't think so. We just got a new update from the Pima County Sheriff's Office here that says, you know, it's still an active investigation, that they've assigned certain detectives to remain on the case. You know, there was some new surveillance video that came out yesterday. They're now acknowledging that they have that. The FBI says they still have a couple of hundred agents working the case. They did move. They had their command post here in Tucson. They just moved it to back to Phoenix, which is about 2 hours away, just because that's where their headquarters is, which did seem to make sense. So I think they're still actively working it. But there is a sense that, you know, a lot of their leads have gone cold at this point, which is kind of discouraging to think about.
Yeah, well, and we'll take your calls. You got questions, comments, 866-967-6887. You mentioned the surveillance tape, and I assume you're referring to the one from a neighbor from it's like what, 2.5 miles away or something, who basically saw like 12 cars going by in the middle of the night and has it on video, but it's 2.5 miles away. Why is that relevant?
Yeah, so it's 2.5 miles away, but there's one road you can take to get away from Nancy's where you would avoid any major intersections and any major roadways. And there are a lot of traffic cameras and license plate readers in the area. So if you took this one route, you would avoid all of those. And this is that route where that video came from, 2.5 miles away. And what's really interesting about it, Dan, is the timing of it, because Nancy's pacemaker disconnected from her phone at 2:28 a.m. On February 1st, you know, early in the morning, 2:28 a.m. And this vehicle driving by in this surveillance video is at 2:36 a.m. So it's just about 7 to 8 minutes after the pacemaker disconnected. And that's exactly how long, and we've tested it, it would take to drive from Nancy's right by this camera on this route that you would take to avoid any major intersections. So it could be absolutely nothing, but those components are interesting to me and make me think that, you know, police are probably taking it pretty seriously.
Okay, that is interesting based on the timing of it, but provide some context for us. Yeah, were there no other cars going by around that time? I mean, was this? I mentioned I think there were 12 cars, but I think that was over like a 6 hour or something period. Wow. How many cars do we know between 2 and 3 in the morning had gone by?
Yeah, there were a couple. There was one, I think like about 10 minutes before. So there are people that take that route. And it's interesting. The locals actually have told us about that route. They're like, if I was trying to get away, that's the one I would take. You know how locals are. They kind of know the back roads. That's the one they'll take to if there's a lot of traffic on the main roads. So there are other people that use that road. But like I said, it could be nothing. But the fact that that's exactly how long it takes to get from Nancy's house to that camera, I think makes it worth, looking into.
Talking to Brian Entin, senior national correspondent for News Nation, who is on the ground and has been on the ground covering this story. Now, the impression that I got, this was a video that Fox News first reported on, and the sense you got at least I got from reading it, was neighbor who lives 2.5 miles away is surprised the authorities haven't asked her or him for anything
Why didn't she go to
on
them?
their surveillance cameras, and they have potential evidence. Is that a fair characterization?
Well, that's kind of the way that Fox wrote the article. It is 2.5 miles away. I don't want to be too hard on the sheriff here. I mean, they were really focused on a 2-mile radius from Nancy's house, and they actually sent out like an alert to everybody's phone saying if you lived within that 2 miles, you got the alert, and they wanted you to go back and look at your cameras, and this would fall right outside that radius. At the same time, I heard from 2 locals to check out this route. So and this Ring camera it's an interesting Ring camera, Dan, because it's not like up on the house. It's actually out on their fence near the roadway, almost like facing right out at the road. Like they wanted to see the cars going by. So I am kind of surprised that a deputy or an FBI agent didn't drive by and think, wow, that could be, a really interesting one for us to look at. At the same time, though, I mean, there's a lot of houses around it. It's hard to really say that they made a huge mistake not finding that camera.
Can you see the license plates on them?
No, you can't see the license plates, and you can barely make out what kind of cars they are because it's nighttime. It's so dark. Like I didn't realize until I came out here, started covering the story. I mean, it really is so dark. They have an ordinance out here for like stargazing, so you're not allowed to have outdoor lights for the most part. So it's just pitch black everywhere. And so it's like an infrared Ring camera look, and you can't see the license plate. You can barely make out what kind of car it is. We think it's a Kia Soul, and I think law enforcement would probably be able to analyze it and figure out exactly what kind it is. But it's even difficult to figure out the car type.
So I've got a question about the past that someone asked me, and I don't know the answer to, and I'm sure you've addressed this like 100 times in the amount of time you've been covering this. But going back to when the FBI was able to find the surveillance video from her home, the images, et cetera. And it had taken, a couple of weeks to be able to get that, in part because she didn't have a subscription. And as a result, it wasn't automatically saved. I've been asked the question, was that too long? Meaning, should they have been able to get that faster? And I'm sure you've been talking to experts in this area, because I don't know the answer to that.
So the issue there is that the sheriff who was initially, the FBI didn't come in for several days. And the sheriff initially said that they couldn't get the video. Like he just left it at that. She didn't have the subscription. He obviously didn't realize, the FBI has these sort of backdoor channels and ways that they can do things with like Google and these big tech companies. So once the FBI got involved, they realized that, and I think this may be one of the first times this has ever happened. It's really interesting that even without a subscription, Google somewhere still had these images saved. Really, and I've never covered a case where they've done that before. It actually makes you think about your own cameras and like how they have all your video without you even really realizing it. So I think it was just so new that no one even knew they could do that. And I don't know, it may take a long time for them to, the way the sheriff described it is almost like peeling back layers over and over again to find it. So I think it may have just taken a lot of time.
Okay. And then another issue, Jesse Weber was on the show recently, also Law and Crime and News Nation. And we were talking, he was sort of talking about this Mexico angle and mentioned that you had actually gone down there, et cetera. And I kept sort of pushing back saying like, is there any evidence that this is connected to Mexico, or is this just guessing?
Yeah, the sheriff has said there's no evidence connecting it to Mexico, but he's also said there's no evidence not connecting it to Mexico, which is kind of like what he says about everything. I think the only, it's like the only thing you can't ignore is just how close Mexico is. I mean, it's an hour drive. It's like 60 miles, so it's hard to sort of totally rule it out. I thought it was kind of interesting that they, from the beginning, have been like, oh, we don't necessarily think it's a Mexican connection, when I don't know how you can say it's not. So we went down there just because it's so close and just to kind of see what the deal was and how easy it would be to get into Mexico, which it was very easy. You don't have to show your ID. You don't have to talk to anybody. You just drive or walk in. All the checks are when you come in the other direction back into the United States. So if you had, I hate to think like this, but if you had someone in the trunk or you had someone that you were trying to hide, it's not like they search all the cars or anything. I think they randomly searched, but we were able to go right in.
Do we know why law enforcement so quickly declared that this was likely a kidnapping? I mean, meaning that, if it's a kidnapping, the idea that they're going to kidnap her and bother taking her to Mexico and then not send any kind of, legitimate ransom request, meaning, not sending something through TMZ, but actually sending it to the family seems absurd to me. Right. And so the whole kidnapping thing after week, I don't know, 1.5 or 2, just starts to feel incredibly far-fetched. What was it?
Coffee as well.
Was it just the blood on the porch? I mean, what was it that made the authorities feel that this was a kidnapping?
Yeah, I think you have to think like abduction versus kidnapping. She was obviously taken, but a kidnapping would be when, someone's asking for ransom and specifically wants something in exchange for her return. And I think it was just those TMZ notes in the beginning. There was never much meat on the bone with them, but I think because they had so little, they couldn't ignore them. And I went back and forth with whether I thought they were legit. Would they really put Savannah through the anguish of having to make all of those videos initially? I think they didn't know. So they had to, it was one option. It was one theory. So they just kind of went with it. But I've never seen any evidence to show that this was definitely a kidnapping. And we just don't know. I think that's it really is still just a mystery. We really don't know.
And it does sound to me, and I want to play number 17 here, like Savannah Guthrie herself recognizes that there's a real chance that her mom is gone at this point. Let's listen. This is from earlier this week.
It is day 24 since our mom was taken in the dark of night from her bed. And every hour and minute and second and every long night has been agony since then. We need her to come home. For that reason, we are offering a family reward of up to $1 million. For any information that leads us to her recovery. Someone out there knows something that can bring her home. Somebody knows. We are begging you to please come forward now.
Brian Entin from News Nation, when she starts talking about recovery, that's different language than the FBI was using about finding the person and the person getting convicted.
Yeah, and I think you've kind of seen her tone change as the weeks have gone on. And her mom had medical issues, needed medicine, had heart problems, wasn't, very mobile. So it's not like this was some young, healthy person that could have, survived in an awful situation for 26, 27 days. But one thing that's interesting about her videos, Dan, that I've really looked at is not that one so much, but some of the others, when she speaks directly to who she thinks took her mother, she almost, and all of this is very choreographed with the FBI, and we've confirmed that the FBI goes and helps her make these videos and goes to the house where she's staying and, really helps her with everything she's saying and the way she says it. But she almost seems like she tries to come across as almost like sympathetic to whoever took her mother and almost like tries to level with that person. And we understand that things may not have gone.
I think they've got to do that because it probably makes the person that took Nancy likely to come forward, I guess, if she says, we don't hold anything against you, we're sympathetic to you and bits and pieces. But if it turns out to be her brother-in-law, I don't think she'll have the same type of sympathy as that. But I also noticed over the weeks that every photo I've seen, well, not every photo, there is more photos on the internet of Savannah and her mum, or Savannah's family, like her 2 children and her husband, with Nancy. But you don't see a great deal of the photos with Nancy with the other daughter. So I think Savannah is probably the most favoured child. That's the impression I get from this.
The way they were supposed to, all of that. And it's really made me wonder if one of the avenues that they're looking at here is if this is like a Savannah Guthrie obsessed stalker type. And that may be why she is trying to come across that way in some of these videos. And I've learned, they've been going back through her emails, all the crazy emails she probably gets as a Today Show anchor. And even when she was here doing she did that segment with her mom months ago where, they toured Tucson back to Savannah's hometown. And I was back at some of the places they went, like one of the Mexican restaurants, and they confirmed to me that the FBI has come and said, was there anyone that was taking too many pictures? Was there anyone you had to ask to back off or leave the area? So I'm wondering if that's really a theory that they're looking into.
All right. So a couple of other questions for Brian Entin, because I have, had so many questions about this case. Is the theory or the possibility that the brother-in-law may have been involved in some way? Have they completely ruled that out?
They have, yeah. The sheriff flat out said that he is not a suspect, that everybody should back off, that it's awful what we've put, or not we, but some in the media have put the family through, which, it is unusual when you don't have any suspects and it doesn't seem like you really have any good leads to.
That's what I was saying about the previous video I shared with you with that Eric guy. If it proves of what he was saying is not true about Tomasco, then he could be done for slander, really. Whereas Brian, I will always believe 150%. But the FBI are obviously holding a lot of cards close to their chest and not letting anybody know the truth. So, know what those cards are. So it's a case of watching this space. I mean, believe everything here on this video, because that is 150% true. And that Brian Entin is the best reporter there is. But the other one that I showed you with Eric talking, I'm not too sure. I'm still on the fence on that one. But the more I'm thinking about it, I'm beginning to think it's just, a fake, it's a scam, it's not true. But why would someone put something that's not true about somebody and name them on YouTube for everyone to see? Yeah, I know it would get your views up and you get more subscribers, maybe you get a bit of fame. But if it's fake and it's wrong and it's misinformation, that person could fall really hard.
Like rule someone out that way during an active investigation. Right. But he did it. And even I'm pretty sure the brother-in-law has been at the house over the last couple of days, helping to kind of, get everything ready for them to take it back over. So that seems, it seems like that whole theory has been totally ruled out. All
right. And what about potential criticism of law enforcement? Because, I'm starting to see some people saying, why did it take so long to bring in the FBI? And look, it's very easy to sit on the sidelines on a case like this and start saying, oh, well, in retrospect, I wish they'd done this and that. But on the ground there, and again, this is why it's so valuable having someone like Brian Entin, who's not just a pundit, but someone who's a fact guy, who's there reporting, talking to the people on the ground, talking to law enforcement. Are people who would know critical of the way law enforcement has handled this at all?
Yes, they are. And there were issues that we've heard a lot about with the sheriff before all of this. It was a very close election, his last election. He won by just a little more than 400 votes. And there's a lot of people here who don't like him, we found, just since we've been here. And there's a lot of deputies that don't like him. I mean, they took one of those votes. I forget what they call it when all the deputies vote. And what is that called again, Dan? What is it? Yeah, a vote of no confidence. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There was a vote where almost every deputy voted they didn't have confidence in the sheriff. A lot of people have left because he is sheriff. And the detectives working the case, I'm told, only have 3 to 5 years experience. A lot of the veterans have left. So I think there's some fair criticism of it just not being an experienced department. They're short-staffed. Should he have initially realized, like, we just don't have the resources to handle this and given it to the FBI, and he still hasn't. I think that's a fair criticism. At the same time, I've interviewed him several times. I think he really wants to solve the case. I mean, he seems like he has good intentions and wants to solve it. But ego may be getting in the way here. That's the sense from people here on the ground, that he wants to be the hero at the end of the day, and that they may just not have the resources to do that.
And how bad was it that they went and broke down some guy named Carlos's door. You know, I mean, because look, it happens all the time in investigations, right? There's a person of interest. They don't even name the person. They just go and talk to the person, and they go and they get a warrant or whatever the case, and then they rule them out, you know? Right. But here you had the FBI either, I think, on or on background, either on the record or on background, confirming that they had a person of interest that they were talking to. They went, they broke down his door, they searched his home, and they then realized, like, this guy had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, and I actually just interviewed his lawyer a couple of days ago. You know, as a lawyer, he still hasn't gotten his phone back, and they've done that a couple times. You know, they had 2 SWAT operations, and I think, you know, they do this probably more times than we realize. But there's so much attention on this case, and we're following them around everywhere, that we just know that they're, you know, doing this and it's not turning into anything. I think what's happening, from what I can tell, geofencing is really interesting. You know, with Google and with the cell phone companies, they can figure out who was right in Nancy Guthrie's yard or street in, you know, the weeks and months before she disappeared. And like with Carlos, he was a delivery driver for a couple of different companies and thinks that he may have been here, you know? So I think what they've been doing is going back, finding people who were in the neighborhood, which you really, it's a quiet neighborhood. It's in the desert. You really wouldn't be here unless you were a delivery driver or something. And then, you know, cross-referencing that with, do they look like maybe they have the same eyebrows? So I think that's how they're coming up with these leads, from what I can tell. And the two so far just haven't, I mean, it doesn't seem like they've been the right guy at all. Because like with Carlos, I mean, the minute you met him, and we all did, and we interviewed, I mean, you're just like, I don't think he's lying. I mean, he didn't seem like he had anything to hide, you know? Yeah.
Final question for Brian Entin on moving forward. Is the FBI and local authorities, are they going to start reducing the amount of resources being devoted to this? Because the flip side of this is people saying, whoa, we're spending a ton of resources on this with no results.
I think so. And we actually just got a statement from the sheriff's office a little while ago that kind of was trying to read through the lines. And I think that's kind of what they're doing, because they're saying now they're going to have specific detectives devoted to the case versus everybody on the case. Just because from some of the locals, one concern I've heard is, like, with everybody in the whole sheriff's office working this case, like, other crimes have sort of been put on the back burner, which is another reason they probably should have just had the FBI take over, and then they could have just handled everything happening in Pima County. So I do think that's going to start happening, which is sad, you know, when you think about, you know, you want to see everything thrown at Nancy, but at the same time, I just don't think it's realistic. Now that we're, you know, I think it's, what is it, day 26 at this point.
If you are interested in the Nancy Guthrie investigation, Brian Entin is the guy you need to be following on his various social media platforms.
And also follow this guy, Dan Abrams, as well. So follow both of these, because I am shouting out their video on this tonight. So definitely go and like them up and, you know, subscribe to them.
You can watch him on News Nation as well. Brian Entin, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I missed you. You know, I used to be on when you were on the News Nation. I was on your show, like at least once a week. You know, so it was nice to talk to you again.
I know. I missed you too. And I mean that both on a personal, but more importantly on a professional level. You're top of the game, and you're doing great. Keep up the amazing work.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. We're back. Been talking about the Nancy Guthrie case earlier in the show, talking about the Bill Clinton deposition. Scott has been patiently waiting from Wisconsin since the top of the show. Scott, thanks for waiting. What do you got?
Hi there, Dan. Hey, I'll be quick on, you just happen to hit 2 topics I've been dying to ask and answer some. The Epstein thing. Everybody just claims that the ones who've been accused of anything wrong. I wish they would change that to accused of anything criminal. This might challenge your morality, decision making, but it almost seems like if a elderly man with influence has sex with somebody who is one day short of their 18th birthday is criminal. But if they have it one day later, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, I hear you, but what specifically is it that you think that we now know from the Epstein files that happened that was wrong and not criminal that you think isn't getting enough attention?
I'm not into the Epstein files. That's way too complicated for my brain cells. So what did you all think of that then? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I will try and read every single comment and reply to all of them. I just hope 1,000 people don't make a comment. But yeah, so, you know, I'm going to sign off now because I'm not feeling too well. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the show. The first video, like I said, take a piece of salt, pinch of salt, because I'm not too sure that's truth news. You know, I think it's fake news, and that if it is fake, Eric has got a lot to answer for. And if it turns out to be fake, I will be sending him a comment. I didn't subscribe to his channel because I can't say that I like what he's done. If it turns out to be true, then yeah, I'll go and click subscribe on it and like his video. But that's why you only like and subscribe to people, so that you can see them grow, like the content they're bringing out. But talking about content, if anybody has anything they want me to cover, it doesn't necessarily have to be true crime, because I'm also into the paranormal. So if anyone wants me to cover anything, my email's down below there, truecrimefiles2026@gmail.com. And I will do my best to do some research into it and put my own spin on things. I might not talk too much. I might chat forever. And at the same time, if you fancy buying me a coffee, go to buymeacoffee.com/CaffeeP and feel free to top me up with caffeine, because with some of this research, you really do need some strong stuff to drink. All right, then. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Bye.